Good morning and welcome to the launch of the ARA's Sustainability Strategy. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jolie Pettit and I'm the Director of Corporate Services and Corporate Affairs at the ARA, and I'm also responsible for the sustainability portfolio. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet. For me, based in Sydney, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm really pleased to be sharing our sustainability strategy with you today, and we have a fantastic panel joining us to help us dive into the issues that it covers. So I'd like to take a moment just to introduce you to them now. First, we have Ainsley Simpson, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Ainsley joined the ISC in 2016 and works across the infrastructure industry to advance sustainable outcomes through the delivery of the IS rating scheme. She is committed to making a real impact in organisations that anchor their core values, develop their people, and support the advancement of women with leadership aspirations. Alexia Gontier is the Chief Financial Officer of Transdev Australasia and has more than 20 years' experience in audit, financial management, and corporate strategy. She's worked across a range of industries, including recruitment, defence, and transportation, and has a broad vision of the finance function, believing financial and corporate strategy must be intrinsically linked and sustainably focused to ensure long-term business success. She's also a passionate advocate for inclusion and diversity in the rail industry. Mark Lusis is the Associate Principal Sustainable Development for Arup. Mark is a passionate advocate and specialist practitioner in zero carbon, climate resilience and sustainable development. He's Arup Sustainability Skills Leader, where he supports the development of Arup sustainability professionals and provides technical leadership on decarbonisation, climate resilience and sustainability. He's actively involved in committees and working groups for a range of national bodies and is a member of the ARA Sustainability Committee. Georgia Gosse is the Program Sustainability Manager for Inland Rail. Georgia has worked extensively in the transport sector and has strong community and social services experience. She's also a member of the ARA Sustainability Committee. And Karthik Krishna Kumar is the ANZ Rolling Stock Planning, Governance and Project Manager for Vlocity at Alstom. Karthik is driven by a passion for a sustainable future and our role in it, and is a member of the ARA's Young Leaders Advisory Board. He's also part of the Sustainability Committee as well. So we are in very good hands with our panel today, and we will be kicking off a discussion very shortly. When we do, we'll be taking questions throughout the process, so please do pop your questions in the question pane to the right of your screen at any time through the conversation, and we will get to them as we go along. But firstly, before we get started, I did want to run you through a quick overview of the sustainability strategy that we've released today, just to set the context for you. So first, our sustainability focus, how we got here. Actually, our sustainability conversation at the ARA started with the Young Leaders Advisory Board, or YLAB as they're known, a couple of years ago when they identified it as a strategic area of focus. And this was very much about the fact that many of our YLAB members had said the fact that rail contributes to sustainable development is an important part of what drew them to the industry in the first place, and it will be an important part of our future growth. So with that conversation starting with our young rail professionals from the industry, it then led to the development of a sustainability committee in September last year. And that committee takes in a broad cross-section of our members from right across the membership base, including passenger, freight and supply chain representatives. So it's a really good cross-sectoral representation to drive the agenda that we have when it comes to sustainability. And that is helping us embed sustainability outcomes across all aspects of the ARA's operations. The committee has led the development of this strategy released today, which sets out a 3-year program of work to identify existing areas of strength and outline a clear plan of action across 6 key sustainability themes. So just quickly taking you through those themes, we have them on the screen now. Leadership, people, energy and carbon, environment, resource efficiency and resilience. So under each of those themes, we've identified focus areas with actions attached to them, which we will implement over the next 3 years. Diving into that in a little bit more detail, looking at leadership, Our core focus for leadership is to advocate and accelerate sustainability practices and low emission outcomes across the rail industry. And there are two main areas where we will focus this work. The first is to develop an evidence-based guide on the sustainability benefits of rail to support the greater adoption of sustainability practices in the rail industry. This will take the form, firstly, of a rail sustainability playbook, which we are scoping the development of right now, and there'll be a range of actions that will support that as the playbook is developed. We've also looked to formalise external partnerships with allied industry organisations, and I'm pleased to say that that work is already underway. This morning we announced a new research project together with Roads Australia and the Infrastructure Sustainability Council to look at ways to help address climate change in the transport sector with new and existing transport projects. So that's a really exciting program of work, which I think will have a real impact for the industry and a really great example of collaboration across the transport sector. Looking at the people theme, we are looking at supporting the community, local industry and workforce to participate, develop and prosper. And I have to say, in putting together this strategy, we've really identified that this is an existing area of strength for the ARA, with a wide range of workforce and skills development programs already in place, as well as a strong focus on diversity and inclusion through our Women in Rail programs and our Young Rail Professional programs. So we're looking to build on this further and doing that in three key areas. The first being looking at how we can further link people and industry together through our careers programs and other programs with diversity. And so there'll be a number of actions to support that work. We're also looking at how we can improve engagement and participation of First Nations people in the rail industry. And we have a series of actions to look at benchmarking existing engagement there and how we can support improvements, and advocating for the eradication of modern slavery in rail supply chains, which of course is a growing focus for all industries, not least rail. So definitely a strong program of work there as well. Looking at energy and carbon, now this theme obviously is an area of high interest at the moment, I think, for many of us, and we will be looking to promote energy efficiency and emissions reduction across the rail industry in two ways. The first, we'll be looking at promoting the rail industry's contribution to supporting a move to net zero carbon across the rail supply chain. And I think there are real opportunities for us to support greater information sharing and collaboration to assist in reporting and transparency in this area within the industry. So we're looking forward to seeing how that develops over time. And secondly, looking at leading our industry's engagement ahead of COP26 this November, which is obviously a key date that many of us are working towards at the moment. So we are expecting to have a bit of activity in the lead up to that event in a couple of months' time. Looking at the environment theme, we are aiming to drive pollution reduction and enhance the existing natural and urban environment with two areas of focus. The first being to support the improved understanding of the management of biodiversity values in the rail corridor, and the second to look at the potential to advocate for national guidance on noise and vibration, light pollution and diesel emissions. And this, of course, builds on the ARA's extensive and ongoing focus on promoting national standards in the rail industry across a broad range of areas. So it's very much complementary to the existing program of work that we have underway. For resource efficiency, we are aiming to advocate for the efficient use of resources, including waste, water and materials in the rail industry. And this is really about harnessing the benefits of circular economy. And I know there's some really fantastic circular economy initiatives already in the industry, which I imagine we will touch on through the course of today's discussion. We also want to look for opportunities to collaborate and share information about the use of alternative materials or recycled content in the rail industry, and develop a guideline for reducing waste in the project design phase. So I suspect there'll be a great amount of opportunity for industry engagement in this area of the strategy over the next 3 years, which is quite exciting. And then the final theme is resilience, where we'll be looking to build awareness to support the effective management of climate risks and contribute to resilient infrastructure and communities. In discussions with the committee, we found that there is some really great work being done in the industry around climate risk and adaptation planning, but perhaps there's not a lot of information sharing across organisations to support better engagement in this area. And so we'll be looking at how we can harness the knowledge that already exists and build on that to create that common approach to addressing climate risk in the rail industry. So that's a bit of a very brief overview of what is quite an extensive program of work to be led over the next 3 years. And I do want to say a particular thanks to the Sustainability Committee, who has done a lot of the thinking and the design behind this process and really helped us articulate an ambition for the industry that is both achievable and allows as many of our members and industry partners as possible to engage with the process and be part of tracking improvements over time. So thank you to all of the committee members that are joining us today, both on the panel and in the audience. Now, I would love to open up for a good panel discussion, and we do want to hear as many of your questions as we can. As I mentioned, we will be taking them throughout the course of the conversation, so please don't wait for the end. Jump in right now or whenever a question comes up and pop that into the questions pane on the control panel to the right of your screen. And we will go from there. So to kick us off, I would like to start with Ainsley. Now, Ainsley, you work with organisations right across the infrastructure sector, and one of the things that this strategy has identified is the need for the rail industry to be reaching out to the broader infrastructure sector and thinking about how we play one part of a bigger picture. But what are the key trends and areas of focus that you are seeing in the sector at the moment?
Good morning, Jolie. Hello, everyone, and kia ora koutou katoa. That's a great question for us to start with. In terms of key trends, there are a number, and many of these are also reflected in Infrastructure Australia's Australian Infrastructure Plan, which was launched last week, Friday. They range from an ageing infrastructure asset base, there's technology disruption, procurement reform, increased needs for transparency, and of course, sustainability and resilience. Now, later this month, the team and I at the Infrastructure Sustainability Council will be sharing the outcomes of our annual member survey. We survey the over 200 members about what they think are the key trends and challenges. And early indications of those results are that all of these challenges are definitely present, but sustainability and resilience are probably the biggest challenge and the ones that we're least prepared for. Now, this reflects a lot of the other global outlook and research studies that are being undertaken, but I think most importantly, it echoes the resounding call from our next generation of leaders that this is something that really needs more focus and attention.
Yes, and that's a very good segue to Karthik, perhaps, because you are one of our Young Leaders Advisory Board members, and this conversation started with young people at the ARA. And it is really great, I must say, to see not just the conversation starting with young rail professionals, but it leading to a really substantial program of work as well. So Karthik, perhaps can you talk a little bit about those first discussions with YLAB and why sustainability was identified as such an important issue for you?
Thanks, Jolie, for that question. Like you mentioned at the start of the presentation, rail as a product being intrinsically sustainable is what drew a lot of us into the industry in the first place. So it was, I think, just a natural consequence that it would be a clear priority for us at YLAB from day one. And that's just on the personal level. When we take a step back, sustainability used to be just a buzzword and viewed as an inconvenience to competitiveness. But we've come a long way since then, with organizations stepping forward with independent sustainability and CSR initiatives. But for us, the end goal is still to get to a point where sustainability and their KPIs just naturally form part of the decision-making process. And that brings us back to the rail industry, right? And it's quite critical from my perspective to achieving that sustainable future. So we can't rest on those intrinsic properties, but we need to press that in voltage. And that comes from setting the standard, pushing the industry to innovate and improve with the right KPIs in mind, because any system built or decision made is heavily influenced by the metrics used to measure them. And that's not to say there wasn't innovation, it was just fragmented across different organizations. And we felt that the best way to accelerate that is to have a common visible platforms. And that led us to the logical conclusion where the ARA, as the peak body for the industry, must lead the way. So at YLab, we sort of noticed that gap and did something about it.
Well, and I'm very glad you did, because the outcome has been very positive. So thank you for your leadership on that, and to the other YLab members that have been involved in the discussion. Mark, perhaps this is a good point to bring you in. You are part of the Sustainability Committee, have been there from day one, and have supported the development of the strategy. So I suppose where YLab have left off, the committee has carried on. Can you talk me through the process that has gone into the strategy's development, and why you found it important to be part of it as a member of the industry?
Thanks, Jolie. And look, listening to you earlier, stepping us through the strategy, it was just so rewarding that the effort that we've put in over the last 12 months as a committee to come together, to coalesce, and to actually really craft a strategy for the generations, really, to take the rail industry forward. It's been very, very rewarding and exciting. For me, when I think about what a sustainable community is, a sustainable city, rail is a fundamental element and part of that solution. It is part of that transport solution of the future of a net zero carbon world. So it is so important that we can articulate what we mean by sustainability for the rail industry, and what are the steps that we need to focus on and do in order to ensure that we can achieve more sustainable outcomes and have that impact that's needed. As a sustainability committee, we've come together on three key platforms. One is about collaborating and sharing information. And look, our membership is from cross-government, cross-sectoral. We have contractors who build rail. We have consultants who design rail. We've got material suppliers. We've got a wide range. So it really is representative of the wider rail industry. We focus around what is best practice, what's already happening out there, and sharing of lessons. And then we're looking at building stronger networking relationships to ensure that we can keep that information flow going. In regards to the strategy itself, we very much started from the point of looking at where the Australasian Railway Association was already, and as you rightly mentioned, there's already some great work having been undertaken, and that provided a good platform. We then looked at what are the recognised frameworks around sustainability internationally, from the UIC, the International Union of Railways. We looked at the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations as a key framework for helping to shape our strategy. We looked at the Infrastructure Sustainability Council and its rating system and approach towards infrastructure sustainability. And they all help to guide and shape those key 6 themes that you mentioned earlier, and those areas for us to then focus on. Importantly, when we crafted the themes, it was then about reaching back into ARA and the various committees and the membership to ensure that there was ownership of those themes and strategy as well. So it's not just a document that sits on a virtual shelf somewhere. It is a live document that is being used by the membership, by the committees, and by wider industry. And look, another key platform of the strategy was the ability for this strategy to align with other key policy platforms that were being released across Australia and into New Zealand as well. So there was a strong sense of understanding what Infrastructure Australia were undertaking, understanding what other industry-related industry bodies are undertaking for infrastructure. So it really does set up Australasian Railway Association for a very sustainable and resilient future.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for your expertise throughout the process as well. It's been great to have a mix of, highly technical experts and strategic experts in the sustainability field, but also representatives that have broader experiences across the membership as well to inform the strategy. So that's been a very positive process. And it is great to have on the panel also representatives of both the passenger and freight sector to showcase a little bit of that diversity of perspectives and considerations that have gone into the strategy as well. Alexia, coming to you as a passenger operator, you're the CFO of Transdev, where sustainability is embedded across your business. And you are very much operating a very busy and dynamic network every day. Now, as someone in a commercial role, why is the focus on sustainability so important, and what does that mean in the daily life of operating Transdev?
Yeah, thanks, Jolie. And before I answer your question, I would just like to congratulate you and the ARA's committee for launching the strategy today. I really believe that if we want to achieve great results, we have to work all together, whether it's governments, public transport operators, or infrastructure companies or associations. And it's by really working together that we will achieve sustainable targets. So that's great to see the ARA's commitment and towards promoting sustainability. Now, to answer your question, as you say, sustainability is well embedded in our operations at Transdev and across all our functions, and finance is no stranger to that. So just to give you a few examples, with our banks, for example, we now have regular catch-ups with them, and it's about green financing, for example, when it comes to finance our assets, but it's also broader discussions, for example, on climate change, where we are having regular discussions and see how they can support our transition. The second aspect maybe is sustainable procurement, which has been quite big over the last couple of years. We are trying to develop a very well articulated sustainable procurement plan with a view to make an impact on social impact, an economic impact, but also an environmental impact. So it's really a priority for us. But I would say the biggest shift I have seen recently has been in our tender activity. So if I look back a few years ago, in our tender, sustainability was nice to have. And it was really the operator's decision to include or not sustainability initiatives in their bid. And over the last couple of years, maybe, there's been a shift, and it's now actually a requirement to put sustainability initiatives in our tenders. And we see the weighting of these initiatives increasing bid after bid. And for me, it's a game changer. So, it's around local employment, youth employment, carbon emission reduction. We must develop a strategy, and we get a rating for that. And I think this is how we will make change altogether. So, yeah, I hope it answers your question.
Yes, and certainly the growing focus on sustainability that you've just described is very consistent with feedback that we've received from members through the consultation in the lead up to the development of this strategy. So it sounds like the experience that you've gone through is being shared across the industry. Georgia, looking at it from a freight perspective, now you've been involved in the committee as well and have been closely engaged in contributing to this process. But looking at Inland Rail, they are also doing some interesting things around supply chain and sustainable procurement as well. Can you provide a bit of an overview of your approach at Inland Rail, and what opportunities do you see for the industry to do more?
Hi, Jolie. Thanks very much. And as I'll echo Mark's comments, it has been a real joy to work on this strategy, and it's such a lovely endpoint to actually launch something. There's a lot of committees that do a lot of talking and a lot of output. So this is really great. And I'll echo Alexia's comments. Getting it into procurement, getting sustainability into procurement is absolutely game changing. Inland Rail saw working with our supply chain as really a legacy piece. If we're able to increase the sustainability maturity of our supply chain, that doesn't just provide us at Inland Rail with better outcomes, that improves the outcomes for any industry that works with those suppliers. So for us, that's just a good thing long term. And so we looked really hard at how we could support our small and medium businesses. And so we developed sustainable procurement webinars that really made it quite easy for small and medium businesses to develop a policy, relate back to their business as usual around recycling and reuse and reduction, and connect that to a sustainability story. And then really importantly, as a client, we're very clear in our tenders about what we're expecting back in returnables. We don't want to hinder small and medium businesses from participating in inland rail. We want to support them and encourage them. So we don't want to knock them back simply because they don't have sustainability stuff built into them. So we really wanted to provide a platform that would elevate them and support them and work collaboratively with them. And I think from the industry point of view, engaging and collaborating early with supply chain is critical. And what we have found is that a number of our suppliers actually have really good solutions and really good ideas. They were just waiting to be asked. And so by simply asking questions through the procurement process, we're getting better outcomes without much effort really at all. It's just simply asking questions. So I think if clients can clearly articulate the outcomes they want and we can engage early with our supply chain, that's, for me, is a really exciting piece of work that we can do across the industry.
And I think procurement and planning is an area where we have seen that conversation happening a lot around how do we get things right at the start to really promote sustainability across the asset life cycle. So it's good to see that that is happening at Inland Rail and that you're making some progress. Ainsley, I just want to come back to you. As I mentioned a little while ago, we have today announced a joint research project between our organisations and Roads Australia. And, excuse me, that has been driven in part by our collective understanding that, to make a real difference and to have a real impact, we need to be working together towards the same goals. And it's been really fantastic to see that project come together and be announced today. But what are the opportunities for us to think about how rail contributes to that wider infrastructure picture to support sustainable transport development in the future?
Thanks, Jolie. I think a number of my panelists have flagged what those opportunities are. Some of the immediate levers that are available to us as a subsector being rail are policy, planning and procurement. From a procurement perspective, I think we've heard some really great examples. What you ask for is what you'll get. And there are a number of our members that are using the IS rating scheme to measure key outcomes like emissions reduction, like more sustainable procurement. It can also be more in deliberate decision making around some of the sustainability outcomes that are being delivered. From a planning and a policy perspective, I think there's another great example which is hot off the press today, and that's the Sustainable Investment Guidance that has been released by the Victorian government through their Treasury and Finance arm. Now, that's a piece of work that's been a long time coming, but it specifically addresses the need to start embedding these kind of requirements and thinking at the earliest possible stage, and that's at business case and planning. Building on from that, it might start to pop into things like approval conditions. So here in New South Wales, we see that the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment are looking at making sure that sustainability is embedded in the approval conditions. So there are multiple different ways in which these outcomes can start being embedded in what we do. It's fantastic that we've announced the collaboration this morning between ARA, Roads Australia and the ISC. I think that this is an opportunity for us to showcase best practice. It will draw on the many examples of opportunities that are being taken by our sector, how that progress is being made across all the jurisdictions that we collectively work, and importantly, some of the policy directions that can help us accelerate change. So there is many opportunities coming for our shared members to provide examples, to provide their suggestions, and importantly also to share some of the challenges and the barriers that are still being experienced, because this isn't something that happens overnight. The IS rating scheme's been functional since 2012, and we're seeing incremental and exponential improvements. That's not going to stop, but it does come from a lot of dialogue about what's working and not what's not working, and that leads to collective progress.
And speaking of that IS rating scheme, Alexia, Sydney Light Rail is operated by Transdev, and that achieved an excellent design rating under that scheme. You're now looking at operations ratings for that project. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And as a passenger operator, how do you approach sustainability at the operations phase?
Yes, thanks for mentioning that, Jolie. Actually, we are very proud of the work that is being done by our Sydney Light Rail team. And so our DNT partners got a high rating on line 2 and 3. And I believe Ainsley, a couple of months ago, back in June, we executed an agreement with IC to now move to the operations and get our accreditation over 3 years. So a big challenge ahead of us. I think if we are successful, we will be the first light rail operator to get the accreditation. So it's quite exciting. A lot of work to be done here. With various challenges. Line 2 and line 3 are quite recent, obviously, but line 1 is a much older line with different challenges to be met in terms of sustainability. So yeah, we will work actively work on that over the next 3 years. But just on a broader approach to sustainability. We have developed a framework at Transdev, and it's very much aligned with the strategy, the slides we presented a few minutes ago, so which is very pleasing to see. And I believe sustainability or corporate social governance is around caring. So we care about our people, and that's the work that our People and Culture Department is doing. You know, it's about youth employment. Obviously, women in public transport and infrastructure companies. It's also working with priority job seeker groups. So that's the first level. And then for me, the second level is our related parties. So all our suppliers, and we talked already quite a lot about sustainable procurement, but suppliers, passengers, clients. So various functions within Transdev are focusing on delivering sustainable objectives for this and together with these external related parties. And then we have community. Community, from my point of view, public transport in itself is a sustainable industry, I find. I find we connect people to their lives, to their families, to their sports, to their schools, and just by doing that, it's serving the common good. So that's why I enjoy so much working for public transport. And the next layer for me, and the last layer, is the environment. And environment is, reducing our carbon emission, and we have a clear target for to reduce by 30% by 2030. So we have some work to do in that space. So, and all our functions, and Sydney Light Rail is very active in the development of this strategy, and all our functions are really aligned to deliver these outcomes.
I love how you talk about all those different layers as working together. I think that's a really lovely way of looking at sustainability and how it works in practice in your operations. So thank you for that. We are starting to get some questions coming through from the audience. So thank you to those who have put some questions in. Before we jump to them, Mark, I just wanted to ask you a question about technology and innovation. We saw the Australian Infrastructure Plan released recently that talked about the need for technology and innovation to drive sustainability improvements. Can you share some examples perhaps of where you've seen this happen within the industry?
Thanks, Jolie. My comment probably would be that sustainability is driving technology and innovation, perhaps rather than the other way around. And why I say that is because technology and innovation is not only about sustainability improvements, it's actually about economic growth and development as well. And where I see the most significant changes is at that whole of systems level. In Scotland, for example, they released a rail services decarbonisation action plan last year, which was really detailing how at a whole of government level, they would drive change to decarbonise the whole rail network. Now, the Rail Authority partnered with Scottish Enterprise and Transport Scotland, and they're looking to build a rail cluster that will focus on being a centre of excellence around, for train manufacturers, for contractors, for academics, and recognising that about having a low carbon and net zero rail, they want to be a world leader in that space. So there's tremendous opportunity in terms of innovation and promoting economic growth to bring together the clusters around the rail industry to drive change in the way that we deliver through our supply chain, through procurement, through design, but actually stimulating economic growth. Another really great example is, and I've seen in India, Indian Rail announced their target for a carbon emission zero network, and they announced that for December 2030. Now, they're the fourth largest rail network in the world. They move some 8 billion passengers, and they've got a vision to be a 100% electric rail network, and that they're doing that by actually investing in solar generation. So they're going to generate 20 gigawatts of clean electricity, and they're using the land adjacent to their rail corridors to actually generate that power. And the solar equipment that they're actually installing is manufactured in India as well. So again, you're creating a cluster and an industry to support the sustainability outcomes that lead to the economic development there. So there's some great opportunities around innovation. In terms of key themes and topics, we're seeing so much happening around energy transition and decarbonisation. In terms of locomotives, I noticed one of the questions there about alternatives to diesel. We're seeing a greater advent in the use of battery technologies and looking at hybrid bimodal locomotives being used there. So these are transition technologies, but it's actually moving away from just reliant on fossil fuels. And of course, the great promise of hydrogen energy. And we're seeing a lot of investment going into that. We're involved in a consortium just converting a rail that will be operational for the COP26 in a few weeks' time. We'll be able to see a rail conversion that's been underway and demonstrate the technology in use. So there's a lot going on to drive change in energy and to decarbonise the operations. We're seeing a renaissance in digital tools, tools that are used for measuring carbon when we look across the rail network infrastructure at a design phase, in the operational phase, and also in terms of very early up in terms of informing business cases, the use of tools like GIS that actually help to select routes based around some sustainability criteria to optimize the design and get those outcomes in as early as possible. And then we're also seeing the emergence of what are called digital twin models, basically designing the whole virtual network before you actually get a shovel on the ground to ensure that you're actually getting those outcomes from a social, environmental, economic, cultural, governance perspective right before you actually deliver. That helps to optimize the investment. It reduces wastage in materials. It provides certainty to the marketplace as well about what's being delivered. We're also seeing at a more localized level on projects, tools that help with reporting, and particularly for the IS rating tool there, when you look at things like air monitoring, noise monitoring, vibration monitoring, some of the remote sensing tools that are emerging, really exciting to see how they can actually provide real-time data to help inform, provide that evidence base around sustainability of what's being delivered on the ground. And then finally, one of the really exciting areas is around RFID devices. And when you start to look at the idea of material passports, and as you merge into the area around circular economy, we're thinking about the first life and second life of materials that come forward there and ways of tracking those. So some really great advances in technology that are helping to support and drive sustainable outcomes.
Yeah, some really fantastic ideas there, and it's great to see that that's happening, around the world, and hopefully we can see Australia capitalising on what is already available, as well as looking at new solutions. Georgia, we've had a question come in around the fact that a major issue for industry is the disposal of redundant materials, and asking whether that's part of our consideration in sustainability. As Mark touched on, we've talked about circular economy outcomes and the potential to look at how we improve information sharing and awareness about what is available in the rail industry, and look to drive improvements there as well. Now, obviously, you were speaking about procurement before. You know, that really starts with procurement, doesn't it? Because it's about thinking about whole of life for these materials as well. How are you seeing the industry think about these things across the asset life cycle, and do you see real opportunities for greater circular economy outcomes in the future?
Yeah, thanks, Jolie. Absolutely. So I think it even starts before procurement. So one of the actions within the strategy under resource efficiency is around designing out waste. So it's actually starting from the very outset of planning and going, well, can we design it out? And if it's still going to be there, what do we do with it at the end of life? And for a network like the Australian Rail Track Corporation, we have a hierarchy of rail assets that we can actually pass materials down. And we even have an example on one of our rail lines that we're deconstructing at the moment. Another rail operator would like the rail, and so we're quite happy to share and to pass that on. And why wouldn't we? So there's a real need to share what's available, and that's not just across freight rail. That's across. It doesn't even have to be across rail, it has to be across infrastructure projects. So if there's one that has excess spoil and somebody needs more spoil, you know, there's got to be a way of creating, you know, sort of a Facebook marketplace around what's existing. Because I think that doesn't just make sustainable sense, it makes economic sense, and it makes it better for projects. So I think one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on Inland Rail is looking at our specifications and making them performance-based so that we can consider alternative materials and recycled materials versus needing to bring in brand new stuff. So considering specs, I think, is quite critical to addressing this reuse issue.
And I think there's so much potential there, and already some great examples in the industry as well. So, you know, I think that's definitely a space to watch. Ainsley, we've had a question about reconciling different expectations and timelines, pace of change, depending on where different organisations are at. And certainly, as the committee has worked through the development of the strategy, one of the things that we've been very conscious to recognise is the fact that, you know, rail is a very diverse industry. People will be coming to this conversation at different stages in their own sustainability journeys, and we really want to maximise engagement as much as possible with the industry to move forward together. What sort of approaches are you seeing that really encourages participation within the infrastructure sector, and how do we make the most of bringing people into this conversation no matter where they are in their own process?
Thanks, Jolie. I think you have largely actually started answering the question yourself. It's recognising that this isn't something that just happens overnight. When we look across our shared member base, there are organisations that are at different stages of the journey. There are different levels of maturity when it comes to sustainability. But I do think we're at the point where this isn't a conversation any longer about, is this right for you? It's about, when is this right for you? And it's becoming a useful dialogue. Meeting people where they are is a really great and inclusive way to help others along. A problem shared is a problem solved faster. And there is, as I mentioned, we've seen incremental and exponential progress over the last little while. The way in which our organisation is supporting our members is one of the ways is through the rating scheme. There is a sequential and stepped out series of criteria and information about what good practice is, what better practice is, and what global best practice is. Understanding what your baseline is the first step. Then being connected with other organisations that are equally making good progress, understanding what some of their trials and tribulations have been and how they've overcome them is another really useful opportunity. I think my encouragement to everyone on this journey is to compare it with safety. because it's actually following exactly the same maturity model. It may well start with compliance. Depending on where you are in the value chain, it is absolutely going to become part of your competitive advantage. And ultimately, we will all shift to having this as a commitment. And when we get there, it will actually become more of a culture, and it will be the way we do things. It will be an opportunity for us to share and grow and create a legacy that goes beyond our own lifetimes. So I think that the opportunities are there. It's just about deciding when this is right for you, and then supporting others along, recognizing that they may not be at the same place as what you are. But as I firmly believe as a scientist that Newton's second law holds true. A force applied to an object at rest causes it to accelerate in a certain direction. So if we're all consistently working together on that direction, not reinventing the wheel, it holds true that we'll all move forward faster together in the same positive direction.
I like that analogy. We'll have to keep that in mind. We have had a question, Alexia, around cost though, because sometimes when you are trying new things and trying to introduce a sustainable practice, it might be that initially at least there is an increased cost to start off with. Now you're obviously making business decisions every day. You're looking at how the industry is responding to things. Is there a desire to put more money in to achieve a more sustainable outcome at the moment, or how do you address those issues at the moment? Obviously, considering sometimes while a more sustainable option may have a higher initial upfront cost, there may be some whole of life benefits as well, apart from the broader sustainability benefits too. So how are you looking at that at the moment?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So in my finance sphere, I think we have to think long term. That's the main thing. It's true to say that sustainability practices tend to be more expensive. Just a basic example, so in the bus industry, but an electric bus is more expensive than a diesel bus, and quite largely more expensive. So, but we still want, and we now have the support of the government to transition to electric kits. But we need to think, what we want to achieve, not now. We can't take decisions based on the cost now. We need to think what we will achieve in a few years' time, and not limiting our thoughts about money, although obviously it's important in my area, but having a broader vision and strategy around what, as a public transport operator, we will achieve. And we really have the desire to do that. And there have been many studies actually which show that sustainable companies outperform. So yes, we might spend more today and have, let's say, lower profitability, but in the long run, we might, outperform both from a strategic point of view and sustainability point of view, but also from a financial point of view. That, I think, the way to go.
And Mark, I know Arup has done some work on train station design, and we've actually had a question around how could we influence station design to improve sustainability outcomes. What's your thinking there, and what role do ARA members play in maybe providing ideas or provoking some thought in these sorts of areas?
And just in response, I guess, also to that last question around cost, and as we think about station design as well there, I'd encourage everyone to think about the cost of carbon as well. And so we all heard from the IPCC, every tonne of carbon matters. Now, if you add a dollar value to that, currently in Australia, I think it's about $35 a tonne. What we are seeing is many clients are building in a shadow carbon price to their projects. And if you start to think about the value of that and what you can do to design out that carbon, all of a sudden it's a different value proposition in the way you deliver your projects as well. So thinking about carbon becomes really important. When it comes to station design, it's both not only in sort of materials efficiency and design and linking in the horizontal and vertical infrastructure, but very much a piece about resilience as well. And increasingly what we've seen, particularly during the pandemic, it's about designing of spaces and flow for people, that customer experience, understanding what that means in a post-pandemic world, understanding what a customer's experience is on a station platform in a 50-degree day, and how you design for that now. So it is thinking about the conditions that we are designing for, and ensuring that we've future-proofed and built in what we can around the changing nature of shocks and pandemics, building that resilience into our design solutions. We've also seen great advances in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, digital tools, so designing in 3D to optimize material use and efficiency, to optimize construction practices. These are things that actually help efficiency in construction delivery, and to ensure that you can maintain operability whilst construction is actually going on there. So there's great advances in the way we deliver our programs of works as well, not just what we're actually delivering on the ground. And that combined with material selection, we're seeing advances in new materials being used, 3D printing of materials. It's already occurring in building elements there. We're involved in some of that work, and we're starting to see more of that transitioning right throughout the industry as means of increasing the productivity flow in terms of the supply chain, dealing with supply chain challenges that exist at the moment, but also particularly around the optimizing design, reducing material impacts, reducing carbon, and thinking about longevity of materials over its whole of life.
And just changing tack a little bit, we've got about 10 minutes left, so I just wanted to touch on the people element a little bit too. Karthik, you've seen this journey from YLab first raising this as a priority to get to quite a measurable program of work that will be delivered in conjunction with industry. Looking forward now and seeing that process unfold, how do you see young rail professionals and YLab being involved in the next phase of this?
Well, I think just from the discussion today, it's just so positive to see both the questions and the answers that are coming out. And I have to say it's incredible just how a bunch of youngsters incessantly nagging has led to this event today. But it holds, it shows the commitment of the people in this committee to achieve these outcomes. But the end goal, like I said earlier, is the same, where we need that cultural change to where we have sustainability as part of the natural decision-making process. And in YLab, we're still following nowhere comparable to what this committee has achieved, but we're still pushing for positive reinforcements, like using the SDG case studies, and keeping that conversation going using platforms like the sustainability breakfasts and the coffee chats to sort of engage more and more young rail professionals to think about innovation as a subject and to keep generating ideas. So that's where I see young rail professionals playing a key role going forward. So we need to maintain that urgency and keep the important conversations going, and through that actively seek out problems to fix.
And it is good to note that a number of YLab members have volunteered to be part of the implementation of some initiatives as part of the first pieces of work coming through. So we're really pleased to see that involvement continuing. Now we've got a few minutes left. I just wanted to go around the virtual room and get some final thoughts from each of you, just on what are the key things that you would like people to take away from this discussion, and are there any messages you'd like industry to be considering as we move forward with this strategy? So perhaps Alexia, if I start with you.
Thank you. Lots have been said today, and for me, the biggest achievement of this webinar is just bringing awareness. And I think by gathering 5 people on this panel and talking about your strategy and also what's happening in our industry is really very important. and it's a good achievement. So I'm very pleased that to have joined today, and I hope the participants will find it valuable.
And Ainsley, any key takeaways from you?
Well, first, a really big thank you to YLab for keeping on asking the same question until it got heard. Well done, folks. My takeout would be this. You're all asking about what you can do. So this is my suggestion to you. If you're working in infrastructure, and indeed rail infrastructure, and sustainability is not a core part of what you are doing, you should be asking whether you are client side or delivery side or asset management side. If not, why not?
I think that is a very powerful message, and certainly one I'm sure participants in this webinar will be asking their organisations if they're not already engaged. So thank you for that. Georgia, any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, it's been lovely to be on the panel. I think we're very lucky in the sustainability space in that it's collaboration's encouraged, and it's encouraged between all players of the industry. It's not a competitive space. So sharing lessons learned, ideas, new findings can only lead to better outcomes for all participants within the rail industry. And I think the entire rail industry does want to be more resilient and contribute to sustainability within Australia. And so we can do that significantly better together. And so by sharing information, we will become a more sustainable industry more quickly and efficiently. So I think wherever we can share and encourage that knowledge and collaboration, that's where we'll get some good wins.
And it's been good to see that already starting. So I'm very optimistic about what we can do together with that. Karthik, any closing remarks from you?
No, I think I would just say this has been very positively reaffirming for me. So it's and I'm just very grateful to be part of this panel and to somehow make my impact as well.
Thank you, and thanks for your contribution. And Mark, how about yourself?
Thanks, Jolie. I'd just like to put a shout out to my fellow committee members. It was really a team effort to bring this together, working together with ARA around the strategy. And so there was a number of people involved who have all contributed hours of effort and knowledge generously to help bring that into fruition with the strategy. I mentioned from the outset, rail is a fundamental element of tomorrow's net zero carbon world, and I think this strategy provides a way forward in terms of charting our path that way. Pay attention to what the IPCC is saying around sustainability. We have choices to make, and I think ARA is definitely making those and providing members pathways forward to help deliver on the sustainable outcomes it has identified.
Thank you, Mark, and I will echo those thanks to the committee. There has been a lot of research and thinking, and I know people have been getting together quite a bit to work through what are valuable and pragmatic actions that we can take to support the industry in its efforts in this area. So thank you very much to all those that have been involved. And thank you to our panellists for the contribution today. It's been a really great discussion, and it has been good to see the questions coming through. If you did ask the question and we didn't get to it, we will circle back to you separately after this webinar. So thank you for sending your questions and for being part of this discussion as well. A short feedback survey will be circulated to you soon, and I encourage you to complete that. And of course, you can find the sustainability strategy on our website. So do look out for that if you want to have a more detailed look. Now, if you haven't already, our next webinar is on Friday, the 17th of September, where we will be launching our Rail Freight Action Plan. And if you're interested in this topic, then you should be interested in that one, because there is a good focus on sustainability as part of that action plan. And it is really an impressive program of work that the Rail Freight team will be laying out next week. So please do join that webinar and have a look at that. But for now, on behalf of the ARA, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.